Today on The People Business, I'm extremely happy to have Mary Beth Kohler. She's joining me. She is the daughter of Billy Barger, who was my high school wrestling coach, National Hall of Fame coach, and the architect of the Walsh Jesuit wrestling dynasty that occurred in the 90s. Billy's influence on me and my customer service philosophy played such a big part. And having visited him recently, I had the opportunity to speak with Mary Beth, and we sat and spoke for hours. And I just thought she would be such a great guest to have on. So, Mary Beth, thank you so much for coming on The People Business today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, when we think about Billy Barger, you know, he has influenced so many people, so many wrestlers, right? But there's a side to Billy, I would say, that people maybe don't know, right?
I would agree.
Yeah. What was it like growing up as Billy Barger's daughter?
It was fun.
I bet.
Yeah.
Because he was fun.
He was the fun dad. He was the fun dad. Lots of adventures. You never knew what you were going to be doing. You know, he would get us every other weekend.
Okay.
You know, my parents were divorced, but there was always an adventure. We learned a lot of things through just experiences that we encountered with my dad.
I bet. So, like, he would come. There wouldn't be specific plans. You didn't know what you were going to do.
No.
And you would just go off on these adventures.
Yes. Yes. Probably not the adventures you would, like, think we'd be going on, but involved, he lived out at the lakes, so we had a lot of fun. We went to a lot of places, got pizza. We went to, like, pubs, let's call them pubs, you know.
Watering holes, sir, yeah.
Watering holes. And we would sit there and we'd play Pac-Man, and we did things that I think to us was normal.
Yeah.
But as you grew older, you realized that not everybody was going to the watering holes.
And experiencing life, right? Playing video games, hanging out with their dad, having pizza, right?
Yes, yes. And then throw in, we spent our weekends growing up at, you know, Firestone High School. I mean, it was about wrestling. I mean, we walked in the doors and we were kind of like on our own. He gave us money for the snack bar and we ran around, and I mean, we developed a lot of friendships though during that time, and those people were like your family.
Yeah. Yeah, because every Sunday, the wrestling team would go wrestle at Firestone High School.
Yep.
Every single Sunday throughout the season.
And it was all day.
And it was all day.
Yeah.
So you would sit there at the school, in the stands, at the snack bar, whatever that was like that day.
Yeah. And then you knew when it was all over, we were going to Parasons.
Parasons, which was did you go to the one in North Akron?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which was like a staple back in the day.
Yep. Good place to take kids.
Yeah.
Family friendly.
That is great.
Yeah.
So he was fun.
He was fun. He was fun. Yeah. We went on boat rides, and I learned how to ice fish. When I think about the adventures that, especially I would say my sister and I went on with him, and then we would have my brother sometimes who was younger. So, but when it was my sister and I mean, we were always on the go. Always. You know, we went hiking. He loved to, as we got older, you know, spending time outside, going to the gorge. And then as we grew and had our own families, that was really important to him, that he spent that time with them, taking them to see the gorge. That was like a big place that we went. We have lots of pictures with him and the grandkids at the gorge. But yeah, it was always, we were outside a lot, you know, and I think that now, like we were talking earlier, when you learn a little bit more about him through his words that he has shared with us, I think that I never realized how big a role that played in his life was the outside. I think he found peace out there.
So Mary Beth has recently, Billy has a collection of writings, and Mary Beth allowed me to read some of those writings. And in that, I didn't realize his love of nature and being outside and what it did for his spirit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I always knew it was a part of him just because we always had bonfires. I mean, like, every Friday night was bonfires, and they weren't like little bonfires. I mean, they were big bonfires where, like, the police and the fire were called. But he knew the rules, you know, he knew how to get away with whatever he wanted, you know. He said, I have my hose and my hot dogs. But yeah, we were always outside. But not having his writings till much later in life, just actually over the last so many years, I didn't realize that that was like his piece,
Yeah.
you know, and that I mean, he introduced it to all of us, but not knowing that that was so important to him, you know. I think that's what it was, like the words, like, yeah, you've learned what things meant to him,
Right.
you know. So in a way, when you look back, it's beautiful because he was always sharing those parts with us, you know. Like, I mean, my sister Heather was the one that rowed the boat. Like, she was the one that drove the boat. My dad would be like, "Oh, you can drive the boat." I mean, like, I'm talking like we were 10, you know, but we were driving boats and going fishing, and it always involved outside.
It's so interesting to me because I have personally found peace and found something outside as well. Like if I'm not outside walking or in the metro park or experiencing, you know, on the river, or if I don't have that in my life for a couple days, like I completely can tell a difference in my psyche, my attitude. You know, like for me, like there's some sort of natural release there. And when I read those, you know, and found that, wow, he had that same love
Yeah.
for being outside and taking in the birds and the beautiful skyline and the trees and water and just appreciating it, right?
Yeah. Well, and he went from, you know, he lived out in the lakes, and then he moved back to Cuyahoga Falls, or moved to Cuyahoga Falls, which he swore he'd never live in Cuyahoga Falls, but he moved to Cuyahoga Falls.
Okay.
And then the second house in Cuyahoga Falls had a screened-in porch, and that became like his place. Like, you know, when he wasn't in the wrestling room, he was usually, if he was not in that wrestling room, he was on that side porch. And I mean, he would be out there. He would sleep out there.
Would he really?
Oh, it would be cold out and he'd be sleeping out there. But I think anybody that knows him has a memory sitting on that porch with him. I mean, from watching Big Brother to Survivor to his political debates, we would sit out there on that porch, and it was just his happy place.
Yeah, I remember that porch from when I was being over there in high school, and I remember him always wanting to be out there when he had that time. You know, the thing about your dad that really was interesting to me on my philosophy on service. Because service is, I think, it's the heartbeat of what we do. I mean, you know, we named our company Serve-Centric because service is the core, it's the center, it's everything,
Yeah.
right? Without great service, what do we really have, you know?
Right.
And Billy being so influential on me, because Billy, I realized that my service mindset is based off of Billy's service mindset because he found purpose in his life.
Yeah.
Right? He really
He did.
did. Can you talk a little bit about that purpose that he had, just for others and for, you know, serving and, you know, the ways he served?
Yeah, it all started with the promise. You know, he was in Vietnam and he was shot. And when he explained it to me and he said that, you know, he was laying there and he thought that this was my time. And he said, I made a promise to God. I said, if you can get me through this, if you can see me through this moment, I will go back and I will do something with the youth. And I think that was his purpose. He made that promise. And he spoke. I mean, Christ was in his life always. He never walked alone, and he knew that. And I think that right there if we all had that, where we always realized that we never walk alone. Christ is always with us, and he walked besides Christ, and he kept that promise. And I think that through his life, he did not have a simple life. You know, he went through a lot. The aftermath of being in Vietnam was with him always. That was a struggle, but that promise kept him going. And he loved kids. He loved kids, and he loved the underdog. He always wanted to see somebody who was struggling rise. And I think that when you think back at the steps he took, you know, he lived his whole life with the servant's heart in everything he did. And because he was faithful, the doors opened, and his focus, you have to have that focus. So his focus was always there, you know. And of course, yes, he wanted to win. He loved that. But he loved people. He loved the kids. He loved the parents. And he was never one to not say it. He said it. He looked you in your eyes and he said, I love you. And I think that people felt that love. You know, they did.
I know I did. And I walked into a wrestling room as a 7-year-old kid who was intimidated, scared, completely out of my natural environment. And Billy, so it started with me. My father and grandfather had a bar restaurant on the lakes.
Yes, I'm sure I was there.
Where Billy would frequent. And Billy became friends with my father. And then it was, Billy said, you should bring your son into the club, the wrestling club at North Akron at Patterson Park. And that's how it started. And I remember going in there for the first time. So I had met Billy at the lakes. And he had started to try to build that relationship with me as a kid, to get, even just to get the courage to want to come and do that. But I remember, and he did this a lot, but he would pull you aside and he would ask you how things are going, what you thought, and he would tell me, I love you. And he would look me dead in the eye. And the thing about when you say things like that, you can feel someone's love. You can feel that authenticity.
Yeah.
And I always say this. I say, I don't feel as if anyone outside of my direct family has ever loved me more than Billy. You know what I mean? And to me now, it's, you know, he's such an important part in, you know, what I do every single day, and that purpose that he had. Because to your point, you said he was on the battlefield, right? And you know, he didn't have, it wasn't like he just, you know, got shot and it was, you know, he had a very low percentage of survival.
Yes.
In that moment in time. And I truly believe that vision, you know, that he said he would do, like, because a lot of people say something in a moment, right?
Yeah.
But do they really act on it and do it and follow it through?
I think it was bigger than that, though, because I think it kept him alive. Because when he came home, his life continued to be a battle. You know, those were, like he said, those were his demons. That was in his mind at all times. He never slept sound. He slept with a loud TV playing. He had to hear noise.
Did he?
You know, and then it was hard, you know. He got married a few times. We all know that. And I think that, you know, that experience in Vietnam played a big part in his life. But I think that promise he made is what kept him alive and kept him going. And I believe also that the kids kept him going. And he just, I don't know, like, he lit up. You know, he always said, there was one thing that he always was really adamant about, even while I was raising my kids, and I'd have those moments, and I'd be like, you're not going to believe what he did. And he'd be like, you got to let him be. You got to let him be him. You got to let her be her. he thought everybody needed to be themselves. And that is so true. If you're not yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to be you, you know? And you have to look at everybody that way too. You have to love each person for who they are and let them be themselves, you know? And he did that. He did that with his relationships with people. He did that coaching, you know? And then when he stepped into Walsh and had a job there and was the study hall monitor and worked in the social justice little group and went on the service trips, oh my gosh, it was like something unleashed in him. Because at that point, he got to be more intimate with all of these young people and really inspire even more people. Because he was already inspiring the wrestlers.
Yes.
But then he took on girls track, and then he took on the Kairos. Like, you think about like the different ways the doors open because he kept that promise, you know, and he loved what he did.
He did.
He didn't probably feel like he was working. Once he was totally at Walsh and he left the printing company, he was just doing what he loved every day. He showed up with a servant's heart, and it was all about being around people.
Now, he just had this, he has this natural ability to connect with people that you don't really, it's extremely rare. I mean, during the whole making of Clash of Dynasties, in this whole documentary, there's a lot of people who played a big role in all of this that have not got the flowers, so to speak, okay? And I respect all those people and love those people, but there was only one Billy Barger who could have brought the masses together to create what was created.
Yeah.
And that was a gift.
Yeah, when you think about all the coaches.
Yes.
Oh, and then you put them all in a room together or afterwards celebrating together, you know. It was made up of a lot of unique people.
Very.
That's what I think was so special about it. You know, like, they weren't your, I don't know, like if you walked into a room, you wouldn't have said, oh, he's a coach, he's a coach. They were all so special in their own way. And they connected. Like, he knew, I think, that you had to have that diverse group to build something so unique, because he wanted everyone to be their own. So each person needed to be able to connect with someone different.
Well, he encouraged it, to your point earlier, being yourself. Like, he didn't want people to all try to be like someone else.
No.
Like, and the same goes for our coaches. The same goes for all the coaches, the wrestlers, the parents. Like, everyone was encouraged to be their own unique person because that was the gift they brought.
Yeah, that's what makes people special.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, and there was a lot of personality. Like, when I think about even from being a little girl and then being in high school in the 90s, you know, during that time, because I graduated in 92.
Okay.
So, like, more like the Danny and the Marcus and the Eric. I just remember, you're right, the parents were so much fun to watch. You know, but my dad had that spunk too.
He did.
You know, like, there were times you saw that temper, you know, but then like 5 minutes later, he's got someone in his arms and he's saying, I love you, you did a great job. You did great, you know? So it's just, I think you got to have a little bit of both inside of you, and he did.
I use my leadership when I'm working with companies on leadership. I use Bill's philosophy, your father's philosophy, because to me, he was the ultimate leader, the absolute ultimate leader. He brought the best out of people. He encouraged people. Yes. He didn't beat people down.
No.
He didn't call people out. He would call them in. You know, he would do these things that you see in, you know, business is a game, life is a game. All these things are games.
Yep.
How did he learn to play the game so well? Or was it innate? Was it Christ, him walking with Christ? Or where did he get such strong leadership skills?
I have to believe it was Christ. I mean, and I say that because of his writings. Mm-hmm. It feels like I don't think anybody knew how much he had that personal relationship, and he was writing things down. I remember him telling me that, like, I wake up at night and I always have a notepad next to me, and I'll just jot things down. I remember him telling me that, but I had no idea to the extent.
That makes sense.
Like, if you look at his writing, sometimes it's just like, it's so random.
Yes.
I mean, he's writing in a notebook in different directions and upside down, and, something came to him and he wrote it down, which means that he was always in that moment, which is another lesson, that he taught, was where you stay in the present.
So let's talk about that, being in the present. What would he talk about when it came to being present in the moment?
He was just simple. Like the nights at the bonfire, like, I can remember we would go down, because I lived on 15th at the time and he lived on 6th.
Okay.
And we'd go down there with the kids, and, I had little kids, but we'd go down there and we knew it was going to be a long night. But, like, he just looked at that moment with the kids around us, and, he would actually make a meal over the fire. He would cook it in an iron cast big pan, and you never knew. He just threw stuff in there. It always tasted good, but you never knew what you were getting. But, like, he just treasured the simple times. And he would tell you, like, this is a beautiful evening. This is a beautiful night, The times where, like, we would take the kids walking at the gorge, he would tell you, this is a beautiful moment. Look at them. They're having so much fun. And he just reminded you of that in ways that, like, I don't even think I appreciated that till now. There's so many things that I play in my head over and over that were a gift that I didn't even recognize in the moment.
What other gifts that you think about today that seem maybe so simple then, or you didn't recognize them maybe in that moment, but now, you're like, wow, that was really important?
Just how he loved us unconditionally. It didn't matter what we did, he loved us. He was our cheerleader. And after he had his brain surgeries, he stepped into a different place with us. Because, during those years of wrestling, he was on the go. He was not always present at the things that we were doing.
Yeah.
He had this life and this commitment, and, wrestling's on the weekends. Wrestling was 7 days a week. So there were things that he wasn't at for us, which was, at the time, I think that as a kid we didn't understand it. And then after he had the 3 brain surgeries, and he made it through all of that, another time in his life where you didn't know, after that first one, we didn't know.
Yeah.
He came through that, and his short-term memory wasn't there, but we thought it might come back. They told us, give it a year. The brain's amazing. But he started living in that moment with us. And he started to, like, open up to us and share with us, and at that point he was riding his bike and he started running. He gave us different gifts. He gave my sister the love for running. And did we know at that moment, when we had both committed to start running with him, every year the memory comes up on Facebook and Heather has to share it with me. I think I made it, like, I don't know, a mile. I was like, this is not for me. And I was even playing Christmas music to keep us in my happy spot is Christmas music. But Heather, like, connected with that. I'm like, all right, I can be the walker with him. You can be the runner. My dad instilled something in her that now saves her life every day. Mm-hmm. She runs for mental health. She completed 100 miles a week ago.
Yeah, she's a badass.
She is a badass like no other.
Yeah.
And she got that from my dad. You know? I mean, that was an amazing gift. And so, like, he keeps giving us gifts. And I think that that's the thing that has struck me so much over the last few years, is that who he was and he's still here. He can't, like, share these stories with us.
No.
But he's left pieces of himself everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it keeps giving. I have people come up to me all the time, you know, or reach out to me, message me out of the clear blue with little stories. And it's fascinating. And it's, like I said to Heather and Matt, like, we're blessed. We're so lucky, you know? We are lucky. That's our dad.
Yeah, and, you know, for those who haven't seen Clash of Dynasties and really don't know Billy's story, and, you know, Billy is he's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He won, I don't know how many Ohio State championships in the sport of wrestling, 7, 8, 9, 10 runner-ups as well, probably 4 or 5 national championships. You know, he is a, you know, Hall of Fame coach where, you know, the new movie Clash of Dynasties really shows that. So if you haven't seen that, that's definitely worth checking out. But to understand his story, but that had to be hard growing up as well because he gave so much
to everybody
else, right?
It was hard.
That had to be hard.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And it's, I don't know, I think I told you this, but, you know, I never heard his story till I had the honor of going with him and being a chaperone on one of the outings with Walsh Jesuit. And we went to D.C. to do the Right to Life March. And we had taken all the kids to the Holocaust Museum. And we got back, we had dinner, and then we sat in a circle, and everybody shared what they took away from it. And then they're wrapping up, and they're like, okay, next, Bill Barger's giving his life story. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
And sitting in there was the moment that, you know, because there were moments where I was upset he wasn't around enough, you know? And I know I could speak for my siblings. They felt the same way. But in that moment, when I heard his story, and I heard the promise, and I heard really his words, like I knew that he was in Vietnam, and I knew that was part of him every day. And because I was there when he would have the nightmares and jump and the loud noises, I knew that. But to hear him speak of that experience, and then to watch him speak of Christ, at that moment, my heart started to heal. And I learned in that moment that, you know what, I need to focus on right now. Right now is what counts. Not yesterday, but today. You know, we lose so much time when we're looking back at the past, you know, and then sometimes we're so worried about tomorrow. You just got to soak in that time right in front of you. And at that point, I realized that I had to let go of anything that I thought at that point I had pretty much worked through it, but things would trigger at times. Mm-hmm. But at that moment, I was like, that's gone. And I can say from the bottom of my heart, I looked at life totally different after that. And once again, giving me a gift that, you know, I didn't even know he was giving me. He just gives gifts. But he always instilled in us, and he said to Heather and I and Matthew all the time, he recognized the fact that he wasn't able to be there. And he always said, you know I love you. And I gave you guys good moms because of that. And he never let us forget that we did. We had the best moms. You know, your mom is there. I am here. And we love you unconditionally. But when I'm not there, you've got her. You know?
Yeah. And that's really interesting, too, because, you know, Matt has a different mother, right? So we're talking about two ex-wives, correct?
Yeah.
In those scenarios. But the one thing it sounds to me as if he did is he always spoke positive about his ex-wives, right?
Oh,
about
he never
about his children's mothers.
Yeah, he was not one to speak ill of anybody.
No.
That's just not him.
That wasn't him, ever.
Even if he had something inside of him, he was never speaking ill of anybody.
But we hear people that do that today, right? It's like, you know, that was something he always was. He didn't have that, you know, that negativity,
No.
you know, towards other people at all.
He was all love.
Yes, he was.
He was.
He was.
He was, even though, like, the background, like, and so I think that's the thing that Heather and I have talked about recently. And I've even said to my husband, I'm like, how did he do that? He had so much going on behind him. And he'd walk out that door, and nobody had any idea of that part of his life, which I respect him for that. You know, I respect him for that because he did not have easy days. He did not have easy stages in his life. But he continued to show up, and he continued to give of himself and that servant's heart. Nobody knew when he was having a bad day. They didn't. He would never know.
Yeah, he didn't show it.
No.
He didn't show it. And I got to be around him every single day during, you know, a lot of my childhood.
Yeah.
You know, I got to spend a lot of time with him. And he always had that positive energy.
Always.
You know? Because he knew that it would rub off on us. And he was always building.
Yep.
You know, building us up, helping, you know, figuring out our problems. He spent so much time. I felt bad. I gave him a lot of gray hairs because I was always almost ineligible, you know, like, so keeping my grades to the point of being able to wrestle, you know, we put a lot of strain on him because he didn't only just have to deal with, you know, wrestling. He had to deal with the entire administration at Walsh. And,
yes.
You know, that was a lot of work,
Yes.
you know.
I think people probably don't realize that a coach that is coaching at a high school level and probably college level, it's 24/7.
Oh, at that level, when you're the national champions year in and year out like we were, he was scheduling us for the biggest tournaments in the country.
Yep.
You know, he was putting together lineups. He was trying to do anything and everything to get an advantage, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, but the one thing, like, going back and thinking about it, he created an environment of love and family. We would have Sunday spaghetti dinners every Sunday at Walsh. We would come in. We would just got done wrestling the night before, but we would still come as a team and gather and eat together as a family. He would bring in the best people to come in and do things for us. We had team doctors, chiropractors.
Yeah,
we had, you know, sponsorship from ASICS. We got the best gear. You know, we got and he played such a role in all of it, you know.
Yeah, he was on the phone 24/7. It's funny because before we moved to 6th Street, or he moved to 6th Street, when he lived on Victor, it was, you know, we had the big tube TV, and it was on the ground, and he'd come in, grab the cordless with the big antenna, prop these pillows up against the wall, and he'd lay there in front of the TV, like right next to the TV, and he would just click, you know, call waiting. And he said he would spend his life putting out fires. you know, because he'd have parents calling and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and then you'd hear him on the phone with, I mean, I have some fun stories that I remember, you know, of a couple of the wrestlers that maybe made a bad decision, like a kid, high school decision. He was like, "What are you thinking? What are you thinking?" And, you know, now I got to go into Walsh tomorrow and I've got to talk. You know, he was just
Yeah.
always, I don't think anybody realized that that's part of being a coach, you know. But going back to the family part of it, is I think that the one thing that you take away from the way he thought in doing that is that each of us that knew him learned that family is not just blood, you know, and I've instilled that in my whole life. You know, he used to bring kids in to stay at our house, you know, and through our life, my husband and I have taken in a handful of kids. And you don't even think twice of it because, like, he instilled that in you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody you love is your family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's another gift you get when you allow people into your life.
Yeah, he is the gift that keeps giving.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's with us, and, you know, but he's in a place right now where he can't share and speak to these things, and, you know, it's got to be hard, right?
It's
you know,
really hard.
And you see him every day, almost, right?
Every day.
Yeah.
I go feed him. If I'm not there, my husband goes. And then my aunts and uncles go during the day. So he actually is very blessed because he has people that come to see him, and lots of extras too. But I think that, you know, I've been telling him that I was coming to do this. You know,
Have you?
I did. I told him, I'm going to go talk about you a little bit. Is that all right? And he responds, like, you know, he'll the best is when he opens his eyes. And the first time when you texted me about this date, I, you know, read him the text. And he opened his eyes. And I was like, is it all right if I go talk about you? And he opened his eyes. And I'm like, he loves that I'm going to go talk about him. Because he loved that, too. He had that inside of him, too.
Well, Billy was a showman. He
Yes.
had that. There was a reason people were attracted to him. You know,
Yep.
he liked the spotlight.
He loved it. He loved it.
Loved it is a
Loved it.
better way.
Yeah.
Yes, he didn't like it. He loved it.
Yeah, he loved it. And I think that was that bittersweet moment when we went to the premiere, is sitting there. And it was fascinating watching that. I mean, to sit there and that's your dad, it's a pretty proud moment.
Yeah.
But to not, like, you would only hope that anybody that would achieve something like that would be able to be present to see it, you know. And the day that you and Ben brought it for him to watch, I mean, it was special watching him react to it. You knew he was hearing the voices and,
Oh yeah.
you know.
It was hard. It was. It seemed like it might have been emotional for him.
Yeah.
And to watch a lot of that.
Those feet started going, and yeah. So I think that was a bittersweet moment because I thought, oh man, he would have loved this. He would have so loved this.
Oh, and I just wish that he could have been there and seen it and been a part of it. And thank goodness that there were some videos that they had recorded of him. There was a lot
Yeah.
of footage of him kind of telling certain stories that they weren't, you know, they were probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago maybe, but they were still documented so that his voice was still in there. But it was really hard that he wasn't able to be a part of that because he loved the camera.
Oh, he did.
He did.
He loved it, you know. And it was last night. It was Kevin and Riley and I was like, let's watch it again. I just wanted to watch it before I came to talk to you, and I was sitting there, and you know, he just was so animated.
He
and
was.
I got emotional last night watching it again because I just like. He was something special.
Absolutely. one of the things that his humor, and he was so good at like making fun of himself in a way.
Yeah.
That's something that I've taken from him recently and really have been trying to do more of, is be like him, because there's a lot of videos out there right now. Like, you could find a lot of Bill Barger videos if you go on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And you start searching around. And he was just so funny.
He was funny.
Oh.
You know what? And it was like, and I don't want it to sound, it's a good thing. Like, he really didn't care what anyone thought.
No.
He was who he was. That stocking cap, he was just Billy B.
He was. And everyone, I think when you have an aura about yourself and this authenticity that is just so 100% genuine, because it's so rare.
Yeah.
Like, everyone in the world today seems like they're, and I shouldn't say everyone, but the majority of people seem like they're trying to be something else, someone else, what someone else told them they should be. And Billy he was 100% his own man. And to me, like, I think that was part of his mystique.
Yeah, I would agree. And he loves, but he still does, music. Loves music.
Loves music.
And when I think about the one song that he sang to Heather and Matt and I all the time, and then he sang it to my kids, and then I try to sing it to my grandson. I don't have a good voice, but I still do it.
Do you want to demonstrate?
No. But you'll have to look it up, but it's Kooky Love by David Bowie.
Kooky Love, David Bowie. Okay.
And it is just the perfect song to be sung by him.
I'm going to check it out today. Kooky Love, David Bowie.
It is on my playlist, and I play it, and I play it for him in the morning, and he does. He responds every time. But we would be driving down the highway, and when we were little, he had a blue Camaro with white leather seats, and you didn't sit in seatbelts back then.
Right.
Heather we would take turns sitting on the hump in the middle of the two bucket seats, and he would sing to us. And we didn't have like the tape in there or anything. He just sang to us, and it's one of my favorite memories.
That's awesome. Billy B, he's impacted so many people. One of the things going through his writings that really struck me, he said that the biggest challenge of humanity is responding positively to a negative thing. Mm-hmm. And that really hit me because, that's negative things happen to all of us every single day, right?
Yeah.
But it's how we react, how we respond to that is going to really determine where we go, right?
Yep.
And that's huge. Like that lesson alone, how was he able to put that into motion, you think, and practice that and to live that on a daily basis? Because to your point, he had a lot of negative things. He didn't have an easy life that happened, but he was able to respond so positively to so many things.
Well, I think that when you start looking at his writings, he made that time to connect and to get that focus, And that's what I've taken away from him. He always never lost the focus of Christ,
Keeping that first at the forefront at all times.
Yep. And it's really like, it's the simplest. I think some of the things that we say are the simplest acts are the hardest to do.
Oh, simple but not easy. Absolutely.
But I think that once you start something, it becomes a part of you. That, we all talk about like our mindsets, and, I always you know, I get teased because I'm like, I choose joy, and it's all about joy. But it's like he said, like if that's what you think about and you put that in your mind, it's gonna eventually just be a part of you.
We become what we think about.
Yes. Yes.
And if we continue to focus on joy,
Yep.
we are going to
Have joy.
have joy.
Yep.
If we continue to think about the opposite,
You're going to have the opposite. But if you keep the joy as the focus, or the positive as the focus, that when you hit those bumps in the road, you're not going to have forgotten what that joy feels like, and you're going to get back there quick because it's so present in your mind. And I think that he had a focus. And you even like as you read his writings, he wrote so much about Christ, but then he was reading about other religions also.
oh yeah.
So he was just always searching for those things that brought peace and love. And that's who he was. That's all he was about. You know, and it really is simple. You know, and I think that having that in his heart every day and remembering that he was not walking alone, he just would step into that place that he wanted to be with those kids, and he just did his thing. It's like, almost like he knew how to not let other things in. Mm-hmm. It's just he was like tunnel vision with his focus.
And that's a challenge in
It is a
itself. I think that
challenge.
when he talks about that challenge, like I think we all know that, right? Be positive, don't be negative, right? But the challenge is letting little things seep in that create big problems, right? And,
Yeah.
and he did such a great job of keeping that vision, that North Star. You know, the standard is the standard, keeping that front and center at all times.
Yeah.
And not allowing success either to get to his head.
No. No, you would not know if you didn't know.
Right?
You would not. Because that's just not who he was.
No.
But he always surrounded himself also around good people with good hearts. And I think that that's part of it too. It didn't matter if he was in the wrestling room with his coaches that he had pretty much handpicked, you know, or outside of there. It was the people he was around. Mm-hmm. He always made sure he was around good people. And he always had fun. He loved to have fun. He loved to have fun.
I think it's so important to have fun. Like there we were the #1 wrestling team in the United States. It's my senior year, right? We've won the national title my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and I'm a senior, and here we are. And that grind can start to get to you.
Oh, yeah.
You're wrestling the top schedule in the country 4 years in a row. You're a little bit beat up, you know, all the things that come along with it. But what did he do to help us? He had us play a game every single day to have fun before practice started. I call it gamification today, but he brought that into our wrestling room. There we were playing a game as little kids, and then that got us on the right mindset, wavelength, to then go out and have a great practice, right? And he did have fun. Like, it was always about fun. When we traveled, we had fun. We would laugh and have fun, and we would joke. And to your point, he did a masterful job of bringing the best people in. And he didn't have to be all things. He was able to just lead and communicate with the administration and do all the CEO level stuff while he had great people, you know, doing everything else. And that's a gift as well, because he didn't have an ego.
No.
That ego, like he did have an ego in a way that, you know, we all have an ego, but he didn't have this like huge head.
Right. He loved the cameras, but yeah, he knew it couldn't just be him.
Right.
And that's like a beautiful thing as a leader.
It's everything.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness, you accomplish so much more when you have people.
Yeah.
And, you know, he led by example.
Very, very much
he
so.
made people feel good. He recognized people.
Yes, he did.
You know, and that right there too is something that when you recognize people, you're giving them that enthusiasm to want to keep going.
He recognized everyone's efforts.
Everyone's.
And everyone who contributed to the program, he would recognize, you know, and make sure they felt appreciated.
Yeah.
And
All those guys felt like family.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about many nights on that side porch with, you know, the wrestlers, Todd Randall, Mark Sienna, like they were like family to us, you know. Fred, oh my goodness, Fred, I still see Fred. You know, these guys were family to Heather and I and Matt. Like, I mean, I felt like they were like uncles, you know.
Absolutely.
You know.
And that was how close the group was. You know, he's unable to be here today, but if he was, and he was sitting here with me right here, right now, and he had the opportunity to give maybe one piece of advice to maybe it's young people watching, maybe it's people that he knows in the past, you know, maybe it's someone struggling with something, you know, what one piece of advice would you think, if he was sitting here, would he give us today?
He would say, you're never alone, and never forget you're loved.
You're never alone, and never forget that you're loved.
And be you. Always be you.
Those are three really good things. You're never alone, you're loved, be you. Oh, wow. I'm so grateful that he was in my life, you know, that I had, you know, so much, because he was my coach from the first moment I stepped onto a wrestling mat till I left high school. You know, I go to college and I wrestle, and I've never been coached by anyone else ever. And that's kind of strange today, because now there's, you know, kids jump programs, and, you know, by the time they're in college, they probably wrestled for 5 or 6 different programs, right? And all I had was what I had, and, you know, and I loved Billy B, and I love him today, and, you know, it's so amazing to have been blessed by him in this life. So thank you so much, Mary Beth, coming on today and sharing some of the stories with your dad. You know, I think it's just amazing, and you know, it's a very, very unique situation, Clash of Dynasties, everything that happened. And if you haven't watched it yet, you got to check it out, right?
Absolutely.
Got to check it out. All right, any last words?
Thank you. Thank you for loving my dad, and thank you for sharing him.
Well, it is my pleasure, yeah, because the world needs to experience what Billy taught and how he taught it in his purpose. So thank you as well.
Thank you.